In this tutorial, we're going to see how we can create 3D type design effects for our t-shirt graphics or our apparel graphics, working in CorelDRAW and Corel Photo Paint. And we can see here we've created an effect that's like a skull that's pressing through this distressed rock texture that's here. And this is not hard to do, and we'll go through this with CorelDRAW and Corel Photo Paint. We'll pick up a lot of tips and tricks along the way. And this will end up as a monochrome bitmap. And once we have a monochrome bitmap, the great part is we can change the colors of it. I can select that and see what that would look like as a blue as opposed to a white on my t-shirt. So I can separate that as a spot color even though it's not vector. As I've often said, working with monochrome, working with imagery that's not just flat vector, gives you a distinct advantage as far as competing with your competitors in your local market, especially those that are just working with vector and really aren't able or wanting to step outside of the norm and do some really off-the-wall design work that's really going to draw attention, because every t-shirt that goes out of your shop really is marketing for your business. People say, hey, where'd you get that t-shirt? That's awesome. And the guy's wearing some stuff with vector on it and his t-shirt just isn't quite as good as yours. Next thing you know, he's going to be coming to your business. So in this session, we'll go ahead and take a look at how we can set up these types of designs very easily in CorelDRAW. To get started here, we'll take a look at a couple of things in some of the design assets that we're working with to create this design. Here we can see a graphic that's from the latest version of the Quake game, and we can see that these effects are very popular with gaming designs, band designs, also possibly bike designs, etc. So being able to create these effects is easy, and they create really nice quality designs with really nice looks on them. And they're pretty easy to print because they're very much grungy, so grungy is very forgiving on the press. And if you're interested in more tutorials, you can check out our website, advancedtshirts.com. You'll find lots of tutorials on design effects in CorelDRAW. We'll also be working with some textures from our Fashion Factory, which is an advanced t-shirts plugin. And this is the image that I took my skull from. And what I did is I just took half of the skull, I cut that out, and then I combined both that one side and then duplicated it and combined the two together to create the skull, because that was really the look that I was looking for in creating this design and the effect that I wanted. So to start here, I'll just go ahead and select this image of skulls, and I'm just going to zoom out here. I'll left click, hold down, right click one time, and that will duplicate that image for me. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here to my Bezier tool. I'm going to start at the center here of his teeth. I'm going to come up right here to where the point is up the top of the skull, kind of right through like that. And then I'm just going to go ahead and start tracing along the outside of the skull here with my Bezier tool, as you can see here. This does not have to be perfect because we're going to be making a lot of adjustments and tweaks and doing a lot of things to this. But I'm going to come through here, come down this way, and then I'll just come in and curve in this way out around the cheekbone. I'll come back in this way around the other side of the cheekbone, and then I'll come in through here. Just kind of stay as close as I can so I get as much of that skull as I possibly can. I'll come up through here, down that way, and I do have a really good tutorial on secrets of the Bezier tool on advancedtshirts.com that will really show you how to work with the Bezier tool. I'm going to come over in here where it's a bit darker. I'll arch up in here, come on down through here, then I'll come through the teeth, and I'm heading over to my original node, which is here, and I'll come through here, pull out that way. I'll hit my C key, and then I'll do the same thing here, and I'll come over here into this area, come up into the black a little bit, hit C again, and that creates a cusp there for me. And I'm just going to follow these teeth, or the shape of these teeth, around the skull here, just getting ready to knock that out so I can work with it in my design. Now that's finished. Now if I hover over that, I now have my shape tool, and I can move that node back up into that area right around there maybe. I might zoom in here and right click on this and change this. That is a line, so I'm going to go ahead and click on this as a node and give that some shape there. Let's see what we've got here. Did I close that or no? I don't think I did. I want to close that. If I got that selected and I click black, it does close. So I've got a object here I don't want to have. I'll go ahead and delete that. Not sure how I got that, but I'm going to go back to my shape tool here. And what I'll do is I'll just take this and give this some curve to it, as opposed to it being flat. So now I've got that cut out, I can take and put no fill on that by clicking on the X on my color palette, give that a yellow outline. I can see the outline around the skull here. Next thing I'm going to do is I'll go ahead and create a rectangle, and I'll just left click, hold down, and make that bigger than the bitmap. Get my pick tool, hold down shift, and I'm going to lasso the vector object that's yellow there. I'll come up here and combine those. Then I'm going to left click, hold down, lasso everything. I'm going to come up here and click on back minus front. And there I've got my skull, or half of my skull, pulled out. I'm going to go ahead and rotate that over until that's straight up and down. Right there. As you can see there. And I can take this also and skew this up a little bit. Get a little bit more there. And then what I'll do is I'll go ahead and duplicate this. So I'll left click, hold down, right click one time, duplicate it. I'll come up here and I'll mirror that horizontally. And I'll have some work to do on this before it's done, but I'll bring this right into this area here. I want to get as close as possible, so I'll go ahead and zoom right in to right about there. And now that's all set. I'll go ahead and select both of these. I'm going to go to bitmaps, convert to bitmap. I'm going to have a transparent background, anti-aliasing is OK, 300 dpi, and select OK. I can take this and I'm just going to pull it up and shape it a little bit, so it's got a little bit of a longer shape to it. And there I've got my skull set up to start working on my design to create my 3D looking effect. Next I'll select my skull, and I'm going to move this over quite a bit to the right to give me some room to work with. Then I'll right click one time with that, holding down the left mouse key, and duplicate that. I'll just keep a backup in case I need it during my workflow, and I'll move that over here. Next I'll come here with my skull and I'll create a rectangle around my skull that's pretty large because I'm going to want some room to work with while I'm working on these effects in Photo Paint. I'm going to right click to take the outline off of that here in the color palette on the X. I'm going to left click with black to fill that with black. Next I'm going to go to my advanced tools. I'm going to open my Fashion Factory. Fashion Factory has 2,400 textures and bitmap fills in it. So you can literally create any type of effect you'd like to in the design process working with transparencies and bitmap fills. I'm going to go to my textures and I'm going to go to System Textures. I'm going to come down to my concrete and rocks. And I think the texture I'll be looking for will be over here on page 4. And let me take a look here, and I believe it would be either this one or that one. I think I'll work with this one. Go ahead and click on Apply Texture as Transparency. Now we can see that effect on the skull when we zoom in. That's now creating that texture effect on the skull, so it's going to blend into the concrete or rock look that we have when we create our effect. Now to make that stronger, I can go up here to my transparency tool, not my pick tool, and change this to subtract, and you'll see that gets a little bit stronger. And I'll be happy with that, as dark as it is right there. That'll be fine for working with. The next thing I want to do is take that same rectangle, left click, move it, right click one time, and duplicate that. Now I want to start working with this. And I'm going to go ahead and make some changes to this. I'm going to copy this, and then I'm going to paste that back in. Now that's going to make that darker. Then I'm going to come over here to my transparency tool. I'll zoom in, and you'll see these handles around this box. And you can start to adjust and tweak what's happening with your effects. So I've got two transparencies on top of each other, but I'm getting a much darker, more profound concrete or rock effect here. I'm actually going to go ahead and copy and paste that again to make it even darker, and then tweak this in even a little bit more, maybe going in a different direction, and then take this center, left click, hold down, move that, and really dial that effect in. So that's all set. The next thing I'm going to do is take my skull that I have here, and I'm going to duplicate that again over here. I'm just going to click on the white fill, so I have just a copy of the skull, and I'll need that for my masking in Photo Paint. So the next thing I'll do is I'll take this skull, I'll select this, and I'll go Bitmaps up here, and I'll go Convert to Bitmap, 300 dpi. I don't need anti-aliasing or transparent background. Select OK. I'll do the same thing here. I'm going to convert that to a bitmap. Bitmap, convert to bitmap, RGB, 300 dpi. Everything's set here. Select OK. And then I'll do the same thing here with the rectangle and the skull I have set up. I'm going to use that for masking. Bitmap, convert to bitmap, same thing. Now I'll go over here and select my skull, come over here and click on Edit Bitmap. That'll open that up in Corel Photo Paint. Now this is set up as a background. That's not what I'm going to want. So I'll come over here and click and change that to Object 1. Then I'm going to go back to Corel Draw, and I'm going to grab this skull here, and I'm going to copy this. And I'm going to go back to Photo Paint, and I'm going to paste that in. And 300 dpi will be just fine because that's the actual size. And select OK. Now, if I look at this, what I can do is I can use this white to make a mask to knock the texture out of the background on my skull in Object 1, and that's what I want to do. So I'm going to go to my Magic Wand tool. My tolerance is set at 11 now, so if I click that, you'll see that I get all this selection here, and I don't want that. And tolerance is really the amount of color that your mask will go through. So I'm going to hit Control Z, and I'll change my tolerance to say 2, and then I'll click, and you can see now I'm not selecting that. I'm going to zoom in here and take a look, and we can see we have some selection here, and I'm going to go ahead and fix this later, so I'm not going to worry about that. But what I do want to do is I want to go to Mask. I want to come down here to Mask. I'm going to go to Mask Outline. Come down here to Expand, and I'm going to expand 2 pixels. And select OK. And once again, I'm not going to worry about this because I'll be able to fix this. With this selected, I'll turn off the Object 1 just so that you can see this. Making sure that I have a masking tool selected, I'll hit delete on my keyboard, and that knocks out my background. And you can see how it did that there with the white. Now I'm going to want to do the same thing now here, working with my textured background or my textured skull. Go ahead and select that and delete that. Now this is just to show you how this works. Now here I'm going to go, and I'm going to go to Mask. I'm going to select Remove. Now, Object 3 I'm not going to need anymore, so I'll go ahead and delete that. Now here where I have this line, I'm going to go ahead and repair that, and I'm going to do that with the Clone tool. And I'll have this set up working with, let's say, 30 here. And I can click here over to one side, and then go right up through there, and you can see that I'm getting rid of that line going up through the skull. And knocking that out. And all it's doing is copying the data from over where you see the crosshair into the area where I'm getting rid of the issue that I have up there. Now I can hit my space key to turn that off and my space key to turn that back on. I can select down in here and come up in here and repair that going up into the top of the skull. Now I'm going to be doing some erasing here, so that's not really very important. I want to come down here and take a look and see if I have that going on anywhere else. I'll make this a little bit smaller. On my nib, I'll bring this down to, say, 12. That's almost unnoticeable, but I'm going to hit my space key in anyway, and then I'll go ahead and grab this area, say right in here, and then come right down through here and get rid of that line as I work my way through there. I'll scroll down here and make sure there's no place else that I need that. And I can't see any place else where I'm going to need that. So go ahead, go back to my pick tool, and we'll zoom out, and there's my texturized skull. Now that that's all set, go ahead and center this and zoom out a bit. I'll go back to Corel Draw. I'm going to grab my background texture. I'm going to copy that. Go back to Photo Paint. I'll paste that in. It'll take just a minute and select OK. Now that's going to be on top, so I'll just come up here to left click, hold down, and drag that beneath my skull. And now I can see my skull on the background of my texture. Now to start making my skull fit into my texture, that'll be very easy to do. I didn't want to move that, so I'll hit Control Z. I'll go to my skull here. Just want to see if that's kind of centered right there. And we can see that we've really got kind of matching textures here. What I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to go to my eraser tool, and I'm going to go, this is about 362 pixels. I'm going to go with a different brush here. I'll go with 100 here, and that's a little bit too small. I want to bring that up in size. I'll go to let's say 300, and I'll just enter that and hit enter. And now I can see the size of my brush. Now I'll zoom in here and I can start to erase out the edges around the skull, and you can see now that the skull is starting to look like it blends into the background of the texture, which gives us that 3D look. I'll come in down through here also. Do the same thing up here at the top. I just want to get rid of any hard edge between the texture that's here in Object 5 and my skull, which is Object 1, so they look like they blend right into each other. And I'll do the same thing here and come right through there. And you can see that effect starting to come together here in Corel Photo Paint. Go ahead and scroll over here, and then I'll scroll down just a bit. Now coming down here into the tight area, I guess I'll change my brush to about, let's say 175, and hit enter. I'll go ahead and zoom in so I can make sure I'm getting this the way that I want to, and just tap there and do some more of the same here around the cheekbone area and just dialing that in. Then I can come in here where I've got the eye and just kind of like knock some of that right out to really add to that effect, and that's a little bit more than what I want. So go over here to my eraser and I'll change this to say 450 and make that big. And you can see that this has got a very feathered edge on it, so I can touch this ever so slightly and start to get that effect leading in, as you can see there. And I can do the same thing over here, just kind of playing off of the feathered edge of the eraser in the brush. I'm going to go change this back to 150, hit enter, and that's 150, and I'm not sure what that warning was, but I'm not going to worry about it. Come down in here and erase some of this out so that fades in. Do the same with the cheekbone here with the shading. Now when I get down here into the teeth, I'm going to go down to, let's say, 75 in size. 75, enter. Quite a bit smaller. I'll zoom in and come around here with my mouse. Now I'm working pretty slow for the sake of the tutorial, but once you learn these techniques, you can do these things very quickly. And I'll zoom out and zoom in. I'm using my mouse wheel to do that. And we'll smooth in down here also. Then we'll come in down here around the teeth, and I'm going to change this now around the teeth to about 25 and hit enter. And come down here and just do some work in the teeth and smooth these out working with my mouse here. Now sometimes you'd be better off working with a brush or a tablet when doing this, but you can see that you can also work it with a mouse. And that's all set there. I'm going to come back out and zoom back in right in here and work on these teeth here, as you can see there, and just smooth those out and fade those into the texture. So I can zoom out and now I can see I'm faded very nicely into my texture with a nice 3D effect. And I might want to come back here with, let's say, 200 size, hit enter, change that size, smooth some things out here where our fades are going on. And I can also do things like, once this is set up, I can go to effects. For example, I'll go to, not effects, but adjust, and I'll go to tone curve, and I could lighten that up a little bit if I wanted to, maybe not too much, just to make it stand out some more. Take some of that darkness that's in there and lighten some of that up, as you can see there, to add to the effect, and select OK. The next thing that I'll do is I'll go ahead and add some shading down here under my teeth, so we get some more definition or contrast in here. To that, I'll come down here to the bottom of the Object Manager, and I'll select New Object. That'll be Object 6. I'll select that, and I'm going to put that underneath. Left click, hold down, drag it beneath the skull that I have here, and then I'm going to go to my paintbrush. And with my paintbrush, I'm going to go to, let's say, something like this 30 here. And I'm going to change the size of that to, let's say, 75, and hit enter. Hit enter. Is that 75? Let me change this to 150. Hit enter. There, that's better. And I'm going to make sure that my color is black. I'm on the right object, which is beneath my skull. Zoom in here, and then start to paint a little bit down around the teeth here to give that some more depth or contrast, almost like a shadow's coming down off of it. Now this looks really dark, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back with my eraser here in just a minute. Now go to my eraser tool. That's already set at 200. I'm just going to very gently come through here off the edge. And I'm going to radically hit Control Z, and I'm going to change that to 500 because I want a nice soft edge. And I want to use the feather that's on the edge of the brush to adjust the shadow, and you can see how that's working now. Much better for that effect. And now those teeth are actually, the top of the jaw here stands out quite a bit more, and it's also more identifiable in the design. So now I've got everything set up here with my texture and my skull. I'm going to go to work on setting up the shaping of the design or the effect. I'll zoom out here, and I probably want to be right about there. I'm going to create yet another new object. Now that's going to come in as Object 7 because I was on Object 6. I'm going to left click and bring that up above Object 1. I'm going to make sure that my fill is set to black, and that's down here in this square. I'll go ahead and close that. I'm going to go to my bucket tool, and I'm going to fill Object 7 with black. I'm going to come through here, and I'm going to change the transparency so I can see the skull. Then I'm going to go to my eraser tool, which was set up at 500, and I'll change that to, I think, 300, and hit enter. And now what I'll do is I'll start erasing through the black, bringing the skull out from the black in the background. Now this is very important that I have the black background, because when I go to invert to create my monochrome, so I can use a white monochrome on a black, I'm going to need that black background. I'll just erase all of this out, and all of this that's in the center, I'll just come in and erase all of that out. Now I could use different masking tools and things here, but I'll just go through all of this with the eraser tool, and I'll come down here through the area of the jawbone and down here into the teeth. And I'll just go a little bit outside of the entire skull because I'm going to start creating different looks using different brushes as I get rid of the black, as you can see here. And I'll come over in here. I'm going to come up here across the top and come out quite a bit here so I get the top of the skull. And this is just my starting point for setting up how the skull is going to come out of the black. Now if I change my opacity back to 100, you can see there I have just my skull. Next I'll go ahead and I'll change my brush for my eraser. With that selected, I'll come up here to my brushes, and I'll come here and grab a brush that seems to have a little bit of grunge in it. I'll go ahead and select that. I'm going to change that to say 200 for size, and I'll hit enter. I'm just going to come through and tap, and you can see that as I tap, I start exposing the texture in the background with the grunge. I'm going to change this to say 400. I'd like it to be a little bit bigger to start with. And I can come through here and tap there, and you can make, any shape you want. I'm going to work with a little bit of a different shape here. I'm going to come out to the sides a little bit and then kind of arch into the top of the skull with the effect that I'm creating here. And I'm just tapping with my mouse button, and I'll come right across the top of the skull here, and I'll fill this in here and click and click. Just keep clicking until I get the basic shape that I want for the way in which I want this to be set up on the t-shirt, and kind of have it balanced on both sides so it'll have a nice balance for the design on the t-shirt. I'll do the same thing here. Come down around the cheekbone here on the right, and I'll come down here along the bottom here. Maybe I'll come to kind of like a point down here near the bottom of the jaw there, as you can see there. I'll just keep tapping here, and this creates a nice grungy look for the way in which the skull is going to come out of the background. Right there. Now that's just a foundation for that, and I'm going to scroll down here, and I'm going to go to my paint tool, or my paintbrushes, which is right here. I'm going to come here, I'm going to get the same brush that I was working with, which was right here, number 47. I'm going to set that up at, say, 150 and hit enter. Then I can come back in and do some more effects with that by bringing some black back into the design and grunging up those edges a little bit more, as you can see right there. Now, for the sake of the tutorial, I'll do this rather quickly. I could spend quite a bit of time in here really dialing and tweaking that effect in to get this a look, but we don't want to be here for an hour and a half doing all kinds of different things. You just want to get the point across on how it is we can create these types of looks and effects in our designs. And I'll come down here along the skull bone here and just kind of distress or grunge that out a little bit more. Same thing here along the front of the jawbone, right there. As you can see, so now we've got a really interesting look there. I could make that bigger and do a lot more work on that, but for the sake of the tutorial, I'll go ahead and wrap here for now. I'm going to go back to my eraser tool, same brush selected, change that to say 100, hit enter, and then maybe bring some more effect down here at the bottom where the chin is to give that like a point down there. Now here we have this all set up. So next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to go and save this back into Draw. And I'll go ahead and close Photo Paint. Then I'll be back in Corel Draw with my saved Photo Paint graphic here. I can take this and go to Bitmaps, convert to Bitmap, and we'll say 300 dpi, and that's fine. And then I could take this and I could go ahead and crop this now based on its size. I'll go ahead and select this here, and we'll double click to crop that. Now if I want to do some more tweaking with this, I could actually do that directly in Photo Paint. I could take this, now it's all set, go to Edit Bitmap again, open that back up in Corel Photo Paint. And let's say I wanted to make this side look more like that side. I could go back to my paintbrush here, which is already set up, and I could dab some black back in here just to maybe add some more grunge to this in different ways, as you can see here. And just dab some different grunge back into the design along the outside, and do some tweaking and dialing in based on how I would like this to look. And I'm just tapping with this brush. As you can see there, I can also go to Effects, no, not Effects, excuse me, Adjust and Tone Curve, and I can make some adjustments with that. I'm going to want to keep my black, so I'll drop a point there, and I could go ahead and pull this out a little bit and brighten that design up a little bit and bring some of these light points back down and make some adjustments to this. Maybe get rid of some of the darkness down in here, as you can see there, to bring that out a little bit and maybe bring this out a little bit here. And there is an in-depth tone curve tutorial on the Advanced T-Shirts website that you can check out and really show you how to use this tool. I'll go ahead and select OK. And for the sake of the tutorial, I'll give it a wrap here. Go ahead and save this. And we'll go back to Draw. And there we can see our design setup. Now, to convert this to a monochrome bitmap, since it's very grungy, I don't really need a perfect bitmap. So what I can do is I can go to Effects, Transform, Invert Colors. Then I'm going to go to Bitmaps, Convert to Bitmap. I'm going to change this to 1200 dpi, high resolution. So when I blur it, I'm not going to lose a lot of detail in the graphic. And I'll select OK. And that'll process. Then I'm going to go to Bitmap, Mode, Black and White. I'm going to come down here, I'm going to select Jarvis. And select OK. Now I have a monochrome bitmap in CorelDRAW. This is a bitmap that can support spot colors or colors. For example, if I left click the blue, I'll change the background color. But I want that to be transparent, so I'm going to come up here and click on the X. Now that's transparent, but my pen, which would be my foreground, is black. I'll take that and I'll go to Bitmaps, Convert to Bitmap, 1200 dpi, transparent background. Very important, anti-aliasing turned on, select OK. Then I'll take this and I'll go to Bitmaps, Blur, Gaussian Blur, and I'll go with 1 pixel. And I'll select OK. And then I can bring this down to 300 dpi as opposed to 1200 dpi, which is very high resolution. So I'll go to Bitmaps and let's say resample to 300 and select OK. Now that's a 300 dpi bitmap. Now I can take my shirt comp here and I'll select this and just left click, hold down, right click one time, duplicate that on top of my shirt graphic, right click on the white, and I'm still in RGB. I got one more thing to do here. I have to go to Bitmap, Mode, Black and White again. And this time I'm going to go to Line Art and select OK. Then I can left click, now that I have my monochrome, left click, take out the background, right click, change that to a white, enlarge this on my t-shirt graphic, zoom in and take a look at the effect that I've got for the skull popping out of the distressed or grunged background. Now I can add some more effects to this just to give it some more depth and a little bit more of an interesting design. I'll go back to my Fashion Factory and I'll go to say something like this texture here and click on Apply as Transparency. Now that went in the wrong way, so I'll go to my Transparency tool. I'll change my starting point of my foreground to 0 and then this to 100, and now we can see that effect. And I can change the size of this as I demonstrated earlier and really dial that effect in on the t-shirt, rotate it, make it bigger or smaller, etc., however I want it to look. And there's that effect set up. Now I can also go ahead and grab my texture, and I won't get into the text because there's plenty of tutorials on text designs and effects, and I want just the text here. I can bring that in, set that across the top, as you can see there, and that's just a text that I took the outline and converted the outline to an object and added a bevel to it, and there's my 3D t-shirt design with the effect built into it, all done in CorelDRAW and Corel Photo Paint with some tips and tricks in Photo Paint and working with my textures from Fashion Factory. And if I wanted to add some different textures to this or some more effects to it, I could copy it and paste it back in. That'll make it quite a bit brighter. I could go back to my Fashion Factory, take a different effect and add that to it. And actually I think I'll do is I'll come down here to cracks and I'll go through some cracks here. Maybe something like this, that's a little bit too strong. Maybe something like this right here. apply as transparency, and now I'll have that effect built into the design. If I take a look at this, move it over, I can see that's also inverted. So I'll hit Control Z, go to my transparency tool, and I'm going to change this to 0. Up here and change this to 100. Now I can see that effect, and I can move that around, etc. And I could make this less and change that, as you can see there, bring that down quite a bit, and really play with and dial in my effects if I wanted to add different effects to the graphic and do a lot of different things with it with the Fashion Factory. I'll go ahead and delete that and go back to the original. But here we have our 3D looking skull face pressing out of a kind of distressed grunge stoner concrete look with cracks set up with our text. We'll go ahead and wrap here, and we'll see you in our next video.